to talk about guilt. And I don't intentionally want to make you uncomfortable. I do accept that that could happen accidentally. um, so bear with me if you would. As I try to always remind when I do these talks, these are just my perspectives. So I'll try to, what I try to share as personally as I can, in the hopes that maybe something will resonate for you. So guilt. Um, I've done a lot of things in my life for which I could feel and certainly have felt guilty or ashamed or remorseful, regretful. But in my practice, I've always also been taught that the past is illusion, which I gather must include these feelings of guilt or shame or remorse. Katagiri Roshi, I believe this is attributable to him, and this is, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but he has said something like, truth is in the space between before and after. I really like that quote. It's really alive. It's really dynamic. Where is that space? How big is it? But from that, then I assume that what comes before or after that space is insubstantial or not truth. Feelings of something that I'm remorseful for or ashamed of or guilty about from 25 years ago or more, or last week, would seem like it would fall into this space before. But when I think about things that I have done that I regret, or rather, when I let myself feel them, the gnawing and the crawling feelings in my gut sure feel real. I made mistakes. I harmed other people. I let myself down. So why do we carry these things with us? Why do we cling to the past in this way, especially if it's painful? Is it helping me in some way, or is it helping people I may have harmed? It certainly doesn't burnish my reputation or shine it up. There's a story that I'm sure you've heard more than once, but I still really like it, and it relates to this a little bit. And it's a story of two monks wandering, and it doesn't matter where they were or what year it was or anything, but they're from a more fundamental school of Buddhism, where the monastic rules are very strictly enforced. They're adhered to literally. They're taken literally. And one of those is we should never have contact with women, us men monks. And there was one older monk and one novice younger monk, very earnest. And they were wandering a path and they came to a stream. And there was a woman who could not cross the stream. It was too deep, too wide, moving too quickly. So the older monk picked her up and carried her across. A clear transgression. The younger monk is visibly upset by this, and after traveling some distance, he asks the older monk, "How could you do that?" And the older monk says, I put her down miles ago. Why are you still carrying her? It occurred to me that, at least in my mind, limited as it is, that relates to this experience of guilt and remorse and echoes from the past. In 1964, I whacked my brother Peter in the face with a little piece of stickers. We lived in the desert, and there were a lot of sharp things around. And for whatever mischievous reason, I smacked him in the cheek with it. It's been almost 60 years. I still carry that memory in my body. My brother thinks I'm crazy, but I still apologize to him from time to time about that. I don't think he even remembers it. I've been in jail twice, and sadly, never once for a righteous reason, for stupid reasons. I carry that shame around with me as well. And I've been in arguments with others that I love, and I said things that I very much regret. And I cannot take that back. I cannot redact the transcript. I cannot rewind or erase that tape. I own it, and if I pause to consider it, even if it was years ago, I still feel it. It's in my body. I think there's a difference between remembering and feeling sorrow or guilt or shame, and on the other hand, indulging it or taking part in self-loathing or ruminating and being crippled by what we have said, what we thought, or what we did. Sharon Salzberg shared this. This is a quote from Sharon. According to Buddhist psychology, there's a distinction that can be made between the feelings of remorse and guilt, between remorse and guilt. If I were to get in an argument with a friend and say something hurtful to him or her hastily, feeling remorse after the conversation would be productive. Remorse does not look like guilt. It is not prolonged ruminating fueled by self-hatred, but a pang of feeling that invites us to reflect. Remorse is thought to be a skillful state of mind, a byproduct of mindfully reviewing our actions, leading to a realization that we have said or done something that has harmed someone else. And when we revisit our words or actions to experience our sense of regret, we're not necessarily self-flagellating with a barrage of negative stuff. So in this way, remorse is not quote-unquote good and guilt quote-unquote bad, but it is seen as skillful because it allows us to experience pain as a response to harm that we've caused another person. It comes from a place of compassion and mindfulness. This is still Sharon Salzberg. We feel remorseful because we see someone else in pain, someone whose pain we caused, and we react with remorse because we recognize our fundamental connectedness. I said something that hurt you, and now I am hurting. From there, we have created recognition and permission for ourselves, and then we can let go. When we let go, we don't repeat the same mistakes. I like that. I think there's a lot in what Sharon said that is really useful. So when is guilt just clinging to the past? Or, as she says, ruminating or self-flagellating? And when is it an alive and present sensation? Something that's right here in that space between before and after. When is it alive in that space between before and after? When is it our perhaps cross-wired tendency to reinforce our small self as a subtle means to feel special and separate? We have a precept about not elevating ourselves and denigrating others. Can remaining stuck in guilt and self-loathing and I'm not worthy be a way of elevating ourselves and making ourselves be more special than someone else? Think about how all this feels. Think about if you can feel the difference between one and the other. We all must have remorse or guilt. Perhaps not. I assume we do. So what's it like to simply allow those feelings to arise, or to arise, and then to reside or abide? Not clinging to them. Not pushing them away. What's it like to deeply experience those sensations, but without creating a story that I star in as the worst guy ever, and I'm ultimately unredeemable? It's a great story. Perhaps some part of that fueled a whole bunch of the anti-hero literature and films of the 50s and late 50s and early 60s. Brando and James Dean, I don't know. That's another topic. In our Fusatsu ceremony, which is where we together renew our commitment to our vows, and we do this quarterly, we use the term atonement. And you've heard Sensei and others talk about atonement and deconstruct the word into at-one-ment. I think it's more than just clever. I really like this, at-one-ment. Atone, in perhaps a more traditional understanding of the word, might conjure penance or working off a debt or paying back or being very, very sorry. At-one-ment really conjures, I'm going to be with these feelings and let them do what they're going to do. So in this ceremony, in the Fusatsu ceremony, we say, all the suffering caused by me since of old, on account of my greed, hatred, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought. Now I atone for it all. As I atone, may love dissolve my fear. May forgiveness dissolve my judgments. May trust dissolve my need to control. May interconnectedness dissolve my alienation. The Fusatsu acknowledges interconnectedness and that we in our lives and all we have said, thought, or done are one. And that we should strive to hold it all without self-guilt, without self-loathing, or without storytelling that I'm the worst guy ever. I want to share this next little next little piece very gently because I don't want it to sound critical. I was raised. I've mentioned this before. I was raised Roman Catholic, and I went to six years of Catholic school from 1959 to 65, and we went to Mass every weekday and Sunday, so 6 days a week, and we went to confession once a week. And there was and probably still is a prescribed ritual for how you do that. It's intended to be private and confidential, and there's kind of the illusion that you don't know who the priest is in the other little room behind the screen, but you always knew who it was because there's only two priests out in the desert parish where I grew up. But I would go in and I would say the things that I had done that week that I thought were sins, and Father Sweeney would prescribe 4 Our Fathers and 3 Hail Marys and 1 act of contrition, and I'd go out into the church and say my prayers, and I did feel differently. I don't know if it was a complete soul sanitizer, but having told someone else that I swore, or that I whacked my brother in the face with stickers, felt a little bit like relief. But my feelings of guilt remained ultimately, and I certainly couldn't help how my brother felt. I was talking the other day with Sensei Joshin Burns at Breadloaf Zen Center in Vermont about this. And before he was a Zen priest and teacher, he was a Dominican monastic, and he also was raised the way I was. And he shared that when he came out of confession, he had a real feeling of having been sanitized, that he was washed clean. But as we talked, we both agreed that these feelings, some part of it remained, and that they do return later, and that perhaps there ultimately isn't a karmic workaround. I don't know about that. And that more often than not, we have the opportunity to work these out with another person at $200 an hour. So, but they're ours. We often refer to Maizumi Roshi's expression, appreciate your life. And as I always say, and he meant all of our lives. He meant the joy, the pain, the ecstasy, and the guilt. Appreciate it. I love the word appreciate your life. So we approach these echoes from the past, these ghosts from our lives, these lingering feelings of remorse, shame, regret, guilt, the same way that we do with thoughts and feelings in Zazen, I think. And from our Fusatsu ceremony, perhaps there's hope. There's the encouragement that these feelings may dissolve due to our love, due to our forgiveness, due to our trust, due to our interconnectedness. I don't know if this is our motto for Eon Zen Center, but we use this often. So what we do is we let come, we let go, we let be with all these things. Joyously guilty. Thank you all for your attention. Appreciate you listening.